What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to TacticalBassin. Today's video, we are talking about fall fishing, more importantly, schooling bass. Doesn't matter if they're deep or shallow, blown up on the surface, schooling fish can be some of the most frustrating but rewarding fishing of the entire season. So today's video, we're covering some top baits, some tips and tricks to help you successfully land more of those schooling fish right now. Hopefully some of you have got a chance to be out on the water and really put these fall fishing videos to use and are having success. We're getting some comments and some messages and stuff, so congratulations, good job on you guys. Today's video, want to talk about schooling fish because the last couple times I've been out, it's been hit or miss, frustrating and epic all in the same day. So schooling fish, first off, what are schooling fish? You know, hopefully some of you guys have been out on the water and just had fish coming up, blowing up all around you, eating big schools of bait, and many fish coming up at one time. A big school of fish coming up and feeding, or even shallow, you know, in grass, multiple fish kind of corralling those bait fish back in the back and just grenading on them. And hopefully you guys have seen that, and more importantly, taken advantage of that either on Topwater or with some kind of reaction bait. But schooling fish, it is fall, air temps are dropping, water temps are dropping, overnight lows are dropping, length of days getting shorter. It is go time for these fall fish. So hopefully you guys have followed along some of the fall transition videos and some, you know, Topwater tricks and all these different videos we've done the last few weeks. Because all that is applicable to today's video, schooling fish. Like I said in the intro, it can be some of the most rewarding but most frustrating fishing of the entire season. You know, it's a lot different when you're out there shaking a shaky head or dragging a worm and you're not getting bit. It's a whole nother ball game when your boat is completely surrounded by fish blowing up and you can't get bit. You know there's fish there, they're showing themselves to you, and you can't buy a bite. It could be so frustrating, but little adjustments, some little tips, hopefully will help you guys have more confidence. Today's video, I got some baits for you guys. I got my go-to baits depending on if you're shallow or if you're deep, and hopefully we'll build some confidence for you guys to go out and find those active schooling fish, either on your electronics or watch them blow up on the surface and put more fish in the boat. So let's talk about, so we talked about schooling fish, and one thing I want to cover real quick is they don't necessarily have to be blowing up all around you. You know, when you're looking on your electronics and you're looking down in 10, 15, 20, 25 feet and you just have stack on stack. We call it lasagna. It's those wiggly, squiggly lines on your graph just stacked all the way to the bottom. Those fish are schooled up. A lot of times on the side imaging, you can see your ball of bait and then you can see the fish behind them pushing that ball of bait. So that's a school of fish also. So we're going to cover shallow schooling fish and deep schooling fish and, you know, fish that are schooling and blowing up on the surface. So we'll kind of cover all of that. So let's talk about kind of how they work shallow, because, you know, through the years, Matt and I fishing, as much as much time as we all have on the water, we've seen some really intriguing and cool things. In the past, we've talked about schooling fish in deep water. We talk about a lot of times it's the little fish that are blowing up and the big fish sit below that bait ball. They sit below those little guys blowing up on the surface, and they just kind of pick off the wounded bait fish and the scraps as they fall down. Well, I want to kind of paint a picture or show you guys, at least get you guys thinking about how that applies to shallow fish. You know, all of us, hopefully, most of us have seen, you know, a bait fish packed into the back of a cove, and you see those fish blowing up on them. You throw your frog back there, you throw your popper or your fluke or whatever it may be, and you're having some success. But what we've seen through the years and how we've really kind of changed our approach to those fish is kind of applying the same thing with those deep fish. The bigger ones aren't necessarily the ones blowing up. You know, out in deep water, they're the ones below. You can catch those. We'll talk about that here shortly. but you catch those fish differently than you would on surface. Same thing applies to the shallow fish. You know, if those fish are up shallow, blowing up, back off a little bit. A lot of guys go in too close to the shoreline so they can reach the back. A lot of those big fish are the, for lack of a better term, they are the fence. They are the barrier that's holding those bait fish in that cove. So they'll sit there, out there, you know, kind of make that perimeter, and those little ones go in there and boom, 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 blowing up. That's what you're catching on your topwater. But if you back out a little bit and fish subsurface, you can really upsize the fish that you're catching. Now, we've all seen it where it goes from little guys to all of a sudden it's the big ones blowing up, and you'll catch them on the frogs, the topwaters. But you know when that transition happens because the size of the blowups and just all heck breaks loose, right? Chaos everywhere, and those big ones decide to move in and do their thing. But for the most part, they sit back a little ways. And let's talk about how you can really key in on those fish and upsize your catch. First off, let's talk about a square bill. Square bill, you know, kind of covers that 0 to 5 to 6 foot range. So if you're in the very back of a cove and it's less than a foot back there, if you're fishing in that 4 to 6 foot range, that's where those fish are going to be. If there's a little bit of a break, they might be sitting on that break where that's where they're going to make that kind of wall, if you will, to keep those fish pinned in there. Talked about it in previous videos. Sometimes those fish will hold those bait fish, those bait balls, you know, a week, 10 days, 12 days, 2 weeks in a certain area. So you can really take advantage of them day in and day out for quite a while. But square bill, you know, your 4 to 6 foot range square bill, if you want to target those deeper fish, you know, again, you're going to burn it, fish it really aggressive, really quickly. You guys know that one of our favorites is that biggie. It's got a real nice knock to it. Again, abalone shad, a lot of flash. Nice blow up. And then to target those shallower fish, that's that Spro Fat Little John 50, 0 to 2 feet. So that is a bait that you can fish up there shallow if those big ones do move in, or if you want to capitalize on those other fish blowing up and you want to go subsurface, that Spro Fat John 50, or just the Little John 50, that goes a little bit deeper. That goes 5 feet. You can see how I've written right there on top, but a little different sound than that biggie. More of a silent bait, kind of has like that rubber ball in there. It just kind of has that dull kind of rubber sound to it. But start thinking about fishing a little bit deeper. Even though those fish are blowing up in the back, the bigger fish are going to be out. So square bill, another great one is going to be, some of these baits are going to apply to both shallow and deep, but another great one is going to be some kind of jerk bait. Either a hard jerk bait like that Megabass 110 Junior, or a soft plastic jerk bait. You know, if you need to, you got to match the hatch. So a lot of times, especially out here, last fall out here, man, those fish were really keyed in on really, really small baits. So you got to downsize, go with the smaller square bills, go with the smaller swim baits, underspins, that sort of stuff. Go with the smaller fluke, but match the hatch. Do that as best as you can. But either that hard jerk bait or the soft plastic jerk bait rigged weedless works really, really well. Later on, we'll talk about the offshore fish, and we'll talk about the donkey rig, the two different flukes going at the same time. But again, I want you to think about those schooling fish in the back of the cove just a little bit differently. You know, next time you see those fish blown up in the cove, don't be in a hurry to get to the back. You know, I'm talking, I don't know, maybe from here to the back of the cove is 100 yards. Maybe start 75 yard. You know, start at the 75-yard mark and fish your way in. You know, if those small blowups start turning into big blowups, obviously get up there ASAP and start throwing your topwaters, your frogs, your poppers, that sort of stuff. But if not, fish your way in, and you'll be surprised with the size of fish that are actually out a little bit deeper that are less visible. So we talked about the square bill. We talked about the jerkbait, soft plastic, and the hard jerkbait. Typically, I go with a jerkbait that doesn't go too deep. You know, again, I'm targeting less than I'm gonna say 6 or 7 feet, right? So don't go with something that's gonna be dredging the bottom down there. You want it just up off the bottom. So go with your or adjust your depth of your jerk bait accordingly. The other bait that I want to talk about is the Flutter Spoon. You know, you can fish this. A lot of guys fish this out on the ledges. You know, Kentucky Lake, TVA system. You're talking about ledge fishing out in deeper water, but you'd be surprised with how shallow you can actually fish this. Now, it all depends on grass. You know, if you're up in grass, obviously you can't fish this, but if you have a nice grass line that breaks off at like 6 foot, you know, fish that grass with a Flutter Spoon. Again, those bigger fish are gonna be out in the deeper water. They're looking for, again, for lack of a better term, they're lazy. They're looking for the easy meals. You know, they're bigger fish. They don't wanna burn those extra calories for no reason, right? They don't wanna run around all over, swim around all over and chase. They're lazy, they sit there, they're eating the scraps. So if you can put a big dying bait fish, hopping that up, let it fall, hopping it up, letting it fall in front of their face, I mean, I think the biggest fish I've caught on that spoon in less than 8 feet was 9 pounds, like 9.2. And so big ones eat that spoon, especially shallow. Topwater is another bait that's kind of that covers both shallow and deep. You know, schooling fish up shallow, get in while you can. If they're blowing up and you've already fished deep and you can't get a bite, but those fish are showing themselves to you in the very back of the cut, that's where they're feeding up on the bait fish. Get in there. If there's grass, get in there with your frog. Your poppin' frog is an awesome bait. I know last year here, and I could not buy a bite in open water. I couldn't buy a bite on any bait except for that Pop Max, that Megabass popper in Matt Shad. And in grass, I couldn't buy a bite on anything except for that Gavacho, that smaller poppin' frog. It's more of a kind of a finessey frog, but that little poppin' frog, you can get back in there where those fish are and work it real slowly and make those real subtle pops, and you don't have to overpower or overwhelm those fish that are in there feeding. So now let's transition to the open water. You know, not grass, not backs of coves. We're talking about spotted bass, well, all of them, smallmouth and largemouth, out in open water. You're not worrying about really depth, and you're not really worrying about grass or anything like that. Let's talk topwater, because that is the funnest way for me to catch them. You know, when they're blowing up and you can get in there, topwater is awesome. My number one tip for you, learn how to not set the hook. You know, I've talked about this a lot in recent videos, just from recent experiences with me fishing open water with big spotted bass. A lot of times they are eating your bait on the second and third blow up. They're not eating it on the first blow up. And if you get in the habit of swinging on that blow up, you take that bait away from them. So wait on the blow up. Lift into it. If you feel weight, then you can jack them or reel down to it a little bit. You don't want to take that bait too far away from them. Number 2 is going to be throw a walking bait. Hands down, that is my favorite style of topwater bait, especially on schooling fish. You know, those fish are corralling those bait fish. They start showing themselves to you. You got to be really precise with your cast. You need to get into that school. A lot of times, as soon as your bait hits the water, you're going to get bit. And they might miss it. Don't set, because fish 2, 3, and 4 are going to eat. A lot of times you can get double fish or 2 fish at once. The other tip for you guys, I talked about it recently in that topwater fall video. I'll link that down below. But throw some kind of front runner. Adding extra hooks. You know, you got your three hooks on this bait. You got your other bait right here. You know, having that bait going side to side. This looks like a little fish or little bass, a little whatever, chasing another bait fish. And a lot of times when you get blown up on this or blown up on this, the fish will eat the other bait and vice versa. So I've caught plenty of fish on the bait itself and plenty of fish on the front runner, and a lot of times fish on both. So if you guys haven't already, I'll link some, I'll link a front runner. You know, that's an older style front runner, just loaded up on those, like I said in that last video. But there are some new products on the market. I'll link down below in the video description. But schooling fish that are actually blowing up on the surface, it's almost impossible to throw a bait better than topwater. I typically don't like fast moving baits, although I will work that topwater fairly quick. I don't want to give them a good look at it, but it's going side to side. It's not covering a lot of distance. It's going side to side, you know, it's going back and forth. It's not covering a lot of distance away from the fish where like a buzzbait or a whopper plopper or something like that would. So that walking bait is key. Long, accurate cast to that school is key. And then if you can, learn how to put on a front runner, because you will overnight double your fish catches adding that extra bait in there. You know, if they won't eat topwater, which again, talked about, it can be frustrating when they're blowing up all around you. Let me drop these real quick. I'm gonna drift into too quick. When they're blowing up all around you and you can't buy a bite, it could be super frustrating. So on the topwater, play around with your colors. Typically go with your bait fish colors, you know, your ghost minnows, kind of your shad colors, or some kind of full metal or chrome colors, you know, something that's really flashy. But it can be frustrating if they're not eating that. So that is when I will switch gears and go subsurface. Now, if they're still up in the water column, obviously today's technology has really shortened the learning curve on suspended fish, or fish that are out here schooling, you know, 5 feet to 25 feet down below the surface, chasing those bait balls. They might not be on the surface, but now with 360 and forward-facing sonar, you can stay on those fish and make accurate casts, even though they're not showing themselves on the surface. So that's really helped out a ton. A-rigs. You know, I was contemplating talking about this, but how do you talk about a schooling fish video and not talk about probably the best bait of all time to mimic a school of bait fish, you know, especially bladed rigs. This is that tactical rig, flex rig, lighter wires, get those real twitches in there, get that school pumping and blowing up, and just lots of movement in that school. You can play around with your swim bait heads, the weights, to get real deep or real shallow. This works shallow depths as well. You know, you say you got some fish in the back, put on 3/8 ounce heads, and you can effectively fish this in less than 5 feet of water. But since we're talking about the deep water, put on a little bit heavier heads, you know, 1/4 ounce, 3/8, whatever it may be. Make sure you're throwing a rig with blades, and get this thing out there where those fish are swimming around. Again, every 5 or 6 handle turns, do a rod twitch or a reel twitch to get that whole rig to condense and expand, and it really mimics a bait fish ball really well. So A-rig, enough on that. An underspin. You know, again, like I said earlier, a lot of these baits will work either the shallow or the deep fish. An underspin, if you're going shallow, go with like a flashy swimmer, something that's weedless, because a lot of times you're going to be in and around grass. If you're fishing in open water, go with an exposed hook. You know, go with something like the cool baits or something like that, where it's just an exposed hook and you don't have to hit them as hard. Whew, big blow up. Hit them as hard to get that good hook penetration. You know, again, schooling fish, it's really hard to pattern the offshore fish. You know, like I said, the electronics, today's electronics has really helped kind of show where they go and how to stay on them. But a lot of times these fish will blow up here, and then 20 minutes later they'll blow up over there, and then 10 minutes later they'll blow up over here. They're moving around with the school. So just keep fan casting with your underspins, your A-rigs. Another great one is going to be a lipless crankbait or some kind of blade bait. I really like the lipless. This is that Jackal TN70. Got a real nice sound to it. Obviously, got a real good flash to it. Looks like a shad, but I'm not hopping this on bottom. You guys know that we like to hop a lipless crankbait. I'm firing this out, letting it sink 5 or 6 feet, and then I'm just burning it back. You know, let that fast moving loud bait come through that water column, and a lot of times you can pick off those fish that are just cruising looking for more bait fish. So a lipless crank, a blade bait as well. If those fish start getting closer to the bottom, obviously you can hop a blade bait through them. We're going to talk about a bait here in just a second that actually works better than that. But an underspin, again, up shallow, weedless. If you're in open water, go with the exposed hook, and then the lipless crank. Talked about that fluke a little bit on those shallow fish earlier, but the donkey rig, hopefully you guys got to see the fluke fishing tips video I did earlier this month or late last month. But the donkey rig, we're talking about throwing 2 baits at once. Same type of deal with throwing that front runner on that topwater bait. You're trying to take advantage of those fish that are schooling up. A lot of those fish come up 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 fish at a time. So when you can have multiple baits out there, you can catch multiple fish at a time. So I will link that video down below in the video description in case you need to learn how to rig the donkey rig, or just kind of freshen up. But it's fairly simple. It's running a leader line off your main line with a swivel and having the 2 baits tied on. And again, you're working that bait very quickly and trying to get those fish to commit. One other bait that really worked well last year, and I don't have one with me, was that Spro Shad. I'll link it down below in the video description, but it's a little swim bait about that big. And again, those fish were blowing up all around us. Couldn't get them to eat anything. Couldn't get them to eat topwater or fluke or anything, but they would eat that little Spro micro shad. So I'll link that down below in the video description. Again, you're matching the hatch. A lot of times they're blowing up on little guys. So you can downsize your topwater, downsize all your baits, downsize your swim bait. If you're throwing a 5-inch bait, go to a 4-inch. Or if you're throwing a 4.8, go to a 4.3 Kitech. But downsize your bait to match the hatch. But that little Spro micro swim bait, I think that's what it's called. Again, I'll link it down below in the video description. But that thing was really cool because it was so small. It's a hard little swim bait, and they were eating it. So it really caught those fish when the square bill, the fluke, the topwater wouldn't. One other thing, guys, on the topwater, most of us throw those bigger, quote unquote, normal sized topwaters. If you need to, just this last week I was having problems with them not getting my bait. I had to downsize to a smaller, like 105 size topwater, and then they really started getting that thing in there. If you're fishing for topwater fish that are largemouth, you don't need to worry about it. But spots and smallmouth, sometimes downsizing and matching that hatch gives them a better opportunity to get that bait in their mouth. You see that one? I'm casting to that one. That is why you throw topwater. I got 2 on the front runner. That right there, guys, is what schooling bass are all about. That is why you throw a front runner. Pretty cool, guys. I got all my baits lined up here to show you guys about schooling fish. One. And two. Schooling fish, so much fun. You guys get out on the water, try these tips. You guys will have more success this time of the year. So many times, guys, I'm sitting here talking, teaching, and their fish are blowing up all around me. Finally get to take advantage of it. Haven't even moved the boat once. Just as I was talking, they started blowing up. And see if we can get another one. That's a nice one. Big old head on it, just T-bone this bait. Nice one. Thanks, dude. Another one, topwater. Another one, thanks, bud. See how they just slash at it? That one got it in the chin. Right below. Thanks, dude. Now let's talk about if the fish are closer to bottom. You know, again, we're talking about schooling fish. You know, these fish could be on ledges, they could be on humps, they could be down deep, 12 to 20, 25 feet, but they're still schooled up, right? They're still chasing bait. A deep crank. So if you guys have specific casts that you need to make to a point in the river bend, or a lay down, or an isolated rock pile, or an isolated boulder, you know, casting out and burning a crankbait down there is awesome. A lot of times you can catch more fish than once. A lot of times you can catch multiple fish in succession. You know, 1 cast, 2 casts, 3 casts, you know, 5 fish in a row when you get that school fired up. Again, we've talked about it for years. These fish get schooled up. You only have to catch one to ignite the entire school. You know, we talked about it a long time ago. It's like kids in class, right? Say a kindergarten class. You can try and give the whole class something and no one wants it. As soon as one kid wants it, that entire class wants it. Same thing with bass, right? As soon as you catch one, it could be the smallest fish in the entire school. As soon as you catch one, you can ignite that school and catch multiple fish and big fish. Because guess what? When those fish get fired up, those big fish get stupid, and that's when they make mistakes, and that's when you can capitalize and put your PB in the boat. So again, a crankbait is something you can get down there deep, get it down there quickly, and make cast after cast after cast to that exact spot and really trigger those fish. 2 of my favorite, the Rapala, that's the DT20, and then the Tactical DD Crank. Obviously, we designed this one, but these both work great. Go with your shad patterns, go with your chartreuses, something that's really bright so they can see it moving quickly. But a crankbait is an awesome way to take advantage of those schooling fish that are on key pieces of structure. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about a spoon. You know, we talked about it earlier when those fish look like lasagna, look like spaghetti all over your graph. You can vertically fish them. You can sit right above the school. Fall time is notorious for those fish to get schooled up and just be in big groups, and you can sit above them and catch fish after fish after fish out of one school on a jigging spoon. More specifically, this is the dust spoon, 1 3/4 ounce. I like a really heavy spoon because I want to get down there quick. Again, you catch one fish, you want to catch 2, 3, 4, you want to get down there quick. Now, if they are deep, be careful getting these things up to the surface. You don't want to cause them any harm, so get them up. If you're coming out of deep water, make sure you bring them up slow. A trick to a spoon to get back down there quickly. If you just drop this and hit free spool, this thing's gonna dance all the way down. But if you thumb it a little bit, put a little bit of tension on your spool, this thing's gonna shoot down like a rocket. It's gonna keep that bait from going side to side. It's gonna shoot down and get down to that depth that you want. A lot of times, playing with the settings on your electronics you can actually see your bait going down. You can see your spoon hopping with those fish. So it's hop, let it fall on semi-taut line, hop, let it, and you go to hop it again, it'll be heavy. They ate it on that fall, and then, you know, reel them up. Again, the spoon's a little bit tricky. You don't want to, you want to get them up as fast as you can without harming them. Again, that's a big 1 3/4 ounce chunk of metal, of lead, swinging out in front of their mouth, so they can lose it, spit it really, really easily. So you want to get them up as quickly but as safely as possible. Again, you don't want to just burn them up because you'll pop their eyes out of their head. But a jigging spoon is an awesome bait, and if you guys have not tried it this time of the year, you have to. It is so much fun. You know, when you can sit above a school and just hop, set, get one, get it up, unhook it, let it go, drop back down, hop, set. I mean, you can catch fish as almost every cast when you get that school fired up on a jigging spoon. And it's one of our favorite ways to catch them out west. And it's been awesome last fall out here in East Tennessee as well. But a jigging spoon is a must. Another bait, obviously, that will take advantage of those fish is a drop shot, a heavy drop shot. Get that down. You can throw that bait. Another one is going to be the axe blade. That's a little heavy tail spin. That's going to shine in that same situation as that jigging spoon. But guys, schooling fish, doesn't matter if they're shallow, out deep, busting, or down close to the bottom. Schooling fish, they are fish that are fired up. They're fish that want to eat, and a lot of times that equates to an awesome or an epic day out on the water. So like I said earlier, you know, don't be afraid if you're fishing shallow. Don't be afraid to back off of those blowing up fish and fish for those fish we call the garters. You know, Matt and I were talking about that earlier, about those bigger fish that kind of hold those fish in their pens. And don't be afraid to switch up from topwater. You know, throw your underspins, your lipless cranks, your jerk baits, your A-rigs for those fish that are out off shore and aren't necessarily blowing up. But guys, this time of the year is a time to get out. A lot of guys are putting their boats away for the year. They're pulling out their bows and their guns, going to go hit the woods to deer hunt. And that is awesome, but that means more fish for you and I, less pressure, cooler weather, and active fish. All in all, it is a great time to get out in the water and catch some fish. If you guys have any questions, please leave those down below in the comment section. I will try to get to those as soon as possible. As always, guys, thank you for watching. We appreciate you. Hit that like button. Remember to subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.